Welcome to our Lunchtime Live program on WJEJ, a partnership with Washington County Public Schools, the third Thursday of the month at this time. This is Will Kaufman, joined by Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Clayton Wilcox. If you'd like to join us on the phone, we have a checklist of stuff, but if you have something in mind or if you want to join in on a discussion that we have going, 301-739-2323. Sir, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
We're here in advance of Snowmageddon, the latest version of the storm of the century, or of the last 1,000 years. How do you look at storms? What goes into the decision-making process when it comes to what we're going to do about potentially about a school schedule change, if there will be one?
Well, first and foremost, it's the safety of our students and our employees. We don't want to have them on the roads in really hazardous conditions. But what most people know about Washington County is it can be really wonderful in city center and really a challenge in Cascade or out in Hancock. So trying to put all those variables together becomes a fairly complex task. But we work with the sheriff's office. We work with the county roads department. We have our own people on the road. We pay attention to the forecast like everyone else does, and we try to make the best decision that we can.
Do you have a stock? Do you have a stock? This is the Wilcox philosophy about, if the snow does not cover an average fourth grader, we're going to school.
Yeah. I mean, if we can see their stocking cap, we're going to school. No.
Yeah, that's right.
Again, it really comes down to, can we transport our kids safely? Right. Is it safe to have young people standing on the streets, perhaps either waiting for buses or crossing streets to go? And again, I rely on a lot of really smart people, a lot of people who care deeply about the kids, and I take their advice and then make an ultimate decision.
I don't think we ever get more opinions than when we have to make a decision one way or another.
And usually we have people on both sides of the argument, so you never really know. You kind of come into that old school of thought that if some people on the right and some people on the left are saying this or that, and you're in the middle, you've probably made the right decision.
Right. We many times will look at other surrounding counties. How does that come into play in your mind?
Well, it really doesn't come into the straight thinking that we do about it, but it is important to have it because we have a lot of parents who work in, for example, in Frederick County. We have folks who work in Pennsylvania, so we want to be consistent. We do talk as superintendents from time to time. I typically talk more often to the Frederick superintendent than I do, for example, some of the Pennsylvania superintendents, but we do talk.
From also on a timely note, the legislative session is up and running. The governor has just released his budget. Any thoughts on what's on the table right now?
Well, one of the things that we were particularly heartened with was that the governor has talked about putting more capital dollars out there because, as you know, our county commission has struggled to put capital dollars on the table for us. And even beyond that, the per pupil allocation has gone up this year by the governor's recommendation. And so right now we're looking at the possibility of $2.5 million more to move forward. And that's very helpful to us.
Let's go to the phone. Good afternoon. You're on with Dr. Wilcox.
Hi, great. Thank you for taking my call. I am living in Washington County for many years, and I applaud the work of the superintendent. But I've been really concerned the past few months because of some of the things that have been going on in the newspaper, and like the packet that had the anonymous letter that was put out at a board meeting. I want to know why that wasn't discussed in a private setting, since it involved inflammatory remarks. And got a board member very upset. I don't know the board members. And then the back and forth argument letters regarding the chairman of the board and the county commissioner, and what really was said. She said, what I want to know, Dr. Wilcox, is there any time that I know they hire you and you work for them, and then you run the school system, but is there any time when you talk to them about ethics? Because it seems to be really out of control. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks for calling.
Thank you. That I think most people can't see is the fact that we do have closed sessions where we talk about issues related to personnel. It's statutorily controlled what we can talk about. But, I've never really felt it was appropriate for me to lecture the elected board on the ethics of their behaviors. The situation that the caller described, one of our board members actually read that letter aloud. She did not bring it up in private session. That is her prerogative as an elected board member. But, I would always encourage that we keep a decorum, a civility that makes sense. But it's been tough for this board. I think probably the best way to approach it is through the ballot box. If people are tired of seeing kind of the rancor, then they're going to elect people that they think reflect more their value system and, that right behavior that will actually lead the school system.
This is an election year, and we're closing in on the filing deadline. I find it fascinating, a little concerning, honestly, that as we speak, doing the show today, there's only one person who has filed a run for 4 contested seats. Does that concern you?
Well, it's troubling to me, and I think it may go back to what that caller just spoke to. I mean, I think people are perhaps reluctant to join into something that they feel doesn't function smoothly, and that, why would they put their volunteer time into something where there's a lot of acrimonious kind of behavior and conduct. So, I'm hopeful that that's not the case, but I think there may be some of that.
If you would take a moment to urge folks to run, those folks who may in the back of their minds or very actively are considering it, what's the upside? I mean, what's involved? What's the upside to getting involved?
Well, I think the upside is that you set the policy for the school district. You help to build a vision for where our community is going to go. Many of our young kids are going to stay here in Washington County. They're going to be the leaders of the 21st century. So what we, I think, do through our service as either district administrators or board leaders is we help to set the tone for what's going to go on. You, as a board member, are responsible for approving a budget of almost $300 million. There are people who talk about how well we spend our money or how well we don't spend our money. As a board member, you have a say in that. You hopefully will represent the electorate who put you there, but at the same time, you're responsible for the direction of the largest employer in the district or in the county. You're responsible for the direction that the system takes in terms of educating its kids. So I would encourage people to do it. I think it's rich and rewarding. I've been privileged to be a superintendent now in 3 different districts across the country, and I've always had boards that put our students first, and that philosophy that if you take care of the kids, many of the problems that face our teachers, whether it be discipline or even their feeling of self-worth, get addressed because kids are doing great things, good things are happening, parents kind of embrace the teaching force. So again, I think if we have board members who put kids first, then great things will happen.
In your experience here, do folks approach you like when an election cycle season comes around? Do you have folks asking you questions, opinions, related to the possibility of running? And I guess more than anything, can they come to you not to support them, but to provide them either information or insights into what's involved? I mean, where would they go for that information?
Each of the election cycles here, and in my previous tenures, folks who are contemplating running have approached me and said, Dr. Wilcox, what's it like? Talk to me about the experience. And I encourage anyone who comes forward to step into that, but I will never put myself in a position of endorsing a board member.
Right.
They are, in fact, my boss once they're elected, so I don't think it's appropriate. But I do think it is the role of a superintendent to encourage people who want to show that level of civic engagement, what the ropes might be.
Let's return to the General Assembly. So we're talking with Dr. Clayton Wilcox, Superintendent of Washington County Public Schools. Again, if you have a question or a comment, you're welcome to call. We'll entertain those. 301-739-2323. There's been a regular urging on the part of Comptroller Peter Francho and the session is a prime opportunity for him again, and likely he'll bring it up, to push the start of school, like as a statewide directive, back to Labor Day, go beyond Labor Day. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think really, from the perspective that I have as a local superintendent, I think it's infringement on a local decision that should be made. I think our community knows when school should begin and end. I don't think we need somebody in Annapolis telling us that, who may or may not be influenced by lobbyists or others in the business community who have a different goal than the education of kids. I think our board is uniquely positioned to make that decision. I think they've done a good job over time. And what people perhaps don't know is that our board has a calendar committee made up of teachers and community members that's over 40 members strong, that sits down and analyzes not only our calendar but where we want to go and how we want to get there, and they make recommendations to the elected board. The elected board banters it back and forth and ultimately makes a recommendation. So I think that decision is best made locally.
Jonathan Hager Elementary School's schedule is coming along nicely. The construction schedule is on time, if not a bit ahead. Looks like budgeting, all of that. The money part of it looks solid. How do you feel about the progress there?
I couldn't be more pleased. Dr. Michael, who is our deputy superintendent, is in charge of facilities, has done a marvelous job of bringing this building to fruition. We're more than 90% complete right now. We are actually at or under budget as we speak today. Furnishings are coming in. The walls are being put up. The building is drying out so that we can paint. I think the community is going to see a beautiful facility. But again, a facility that was built with the current economic climate in mind. You don't see a lot of frills in it, but what you see is a well-built building that should last for this community for 40 to 50 years.
We've already announced a principal. What's to the timing there?
Kathy Stiles was recently selected as the principal. She is now working on building her staff. I believe she's selected her head custodian. She's working on her lead teacher. She'll be starting to select her faculty during the month of February. It's an exciting time for Kathy. She's not only doing the faculty selections, but she's looking at furnishings. She's looking at library materials. She's looking at resources for teachers. She's got a full-time job while she's still finishing up her full-time job.
I had to chuckle a bit because she opened. Is she our go-to open a new school principal? Is that?
I don't think so, but I think in this case it made sense to have somebody who was a little bit seasoned and had some experience before. Every principal that I know wants the privilege of opening a new school. And so, if we're blessed to have our population increase, or if the community sees that some of our facilities need to be replaced, I think that's something that we'll pass around to other principals, but we'll be guided by the experience that Kathy and others who have opened new schools have.
Because she's splitting duties a bit and transitioning into a new school in the middle of the current year, is there any concern over the mild bit of shuffling involved in building administration?
Not concerned, but we're spending a lot of time thinking about it. As you know, Winter Street is closing, as is Conicajig. We've taken the principal at Winter Street and we've put her in place of Kathy Stiles, effective February 19th. Then Kathy will come to our building at the CES and kind of take care of all of these details that we've outlined. And when we get occupancy in her new building, Jonathan Hager, she'll go there and work. In the meantime, we had the opportunity to promote one of our assistant principals to the position of acting principal at another site. So we've got a little churn right now, but I think that's a good thing for the system.
She gets to select her own staff, the teaching staff. Is that her call?
That will be her call, okay, along with her leadership team. But what she has to do is select from teachers who are being involuntarily transferred out of the schools that we're closing, or from vacancies that we have elsewhere in the system.
If you're just joining us, I'm talking with Dr. Clayton Wilcox, Superintendent of Washington County Public Schools. This is Lunchtime Live. We're here the first Thursday of the month for a half-hour show to talk about issues and welcome your topics, too. Open teacher contract negotiations has just come up and has just been given the thumbs up. It's a unique twist.
It is a unique twist. The first time in my professional career.
Is that right?
It really is.
Yeah. Thoughts?
Well, I'm open to it right now. As you know, Dr. Harding's on our board first proposed it because he thought that the community deserved the opportunity to see the back and forth that goes on as we spend the community's resources. It's a big set of decisions, and while neither side has made its opening proposal yet, I think the community will be interested in looking at it. I mean, we're talking about how we're going to spend millions of dollars going forward, or not spend millions of dollars going forward. So, I think that what we'll see is the Herald Mail will be there. I think they'll probably video some of the ongoing discussions. I think you'll see more articles coming out of it. I'm hopeful that, people will witness a very respectful dialogue of back and forth. The Teachers Association has been a good partner over time, and they're looking carefully at our budget and financial documents. I know they're waiting to see what my recommended budget will be in early February, because they'll want to see if we've thought about teacher salaries and have we thought about other employee group salaries. So I'm cautiously optimistic that it will be a good process, that, because the public eye is on it, the decorum will be such that we can all be proud of how we get to the solution.
Is there a possibility that it will actually chill discussions, though? that it won't be an open and frank discussion, and there won't be the necessary behind the scenes sort of action and true debate that'll lead to.
Yeah, I think that is a distinct possibility. Will people might not feel that they can say that? I think the place where I think it may have some effect is in how people say things to people, and I think people might not say things with the passion, and so the importance of the issue may not be conveyed in a way. But I think we all want the same thing at the end of the day. I think we want to pay our teachers fairly. We want to find a nice balance between what we can pay and what the community believes we should pay. And I think we all want to put the best teachers we can in front of kids. And if that requires adjusting starting salaries, or if that requires, putting more money in the back end to keep veteran teachers there, I think the community deserves to see that discussion.
See, I think what we really want to see is in the public eye, a good old fist fight. Some true negotiating in like old school style. Where it just breaks out.
Well, but that's really not how good things get done. And
yeah, that's right.
I
don't know if this is right. I heard that happens in your negotiations, even though they're closed. Obviously.
The board has been really good to me. I can't really complain. I know that there are some people who think I make too much. I know my wife doesn't think I make enough. So it's just one of those things. I had some people call me right after my increase was passed by the board, and they told me in no uncertain terms that I made way too much money for what I did, and they wanted to know which school I was actually responsible for. And when I said that I'm responsible for all of the 48 schools in the community, that we have a $300 million budget, that we have 3,000 employees, and somebody said, well, maybe you're not making enough. But honestly, I'm well compensated for what I do. So,
what are the biggest challenges in putting together the budget? In general terms, certainly, but certainly this year. This year seems like it's going to be a challenge.
Well, I think the biggest challenge is all the competing priorities. As we've had some discussion with the different county commissioners, some people have said we're not spending enough money on special ed. We don't have enough supply money. We've reallocated money inappropriately. I don't think we've done anything inappropriate. I don't think we've done anything in violation of the law. I don't think we've even stepped up to the spirit. But I would say trying to find that right balance is always the challenge. Trying to create a salary resource pool for our team is always a challenge. What people don't perhaps understand is that our teaching staff has a step increase scale, and to fund that scale, to age our teachers 1 year and to honor their advanced degrees, typically costs us anywhere from $2.6 to $3 million, depending on how you calculate some things. And then you have our other employees, and so when you really start talking about our other employees and you put it all together, it's $3.4 million just to age our staff. And then a lot of people will say, well, yeah, but I expected that. Where's my raise? Because they want something beyond that. And so, again, it's a tough economy. There are a lot of people who aren't getting raises. There are a lot of people who have been looking for work for months and months and months. They've aged out of the unemployment system. They can't get any more. And, when they look at teachers saying they want this, or a support staff are saying when they want this, or a superintendent who got 3%, they're saying that, why should that happen? So building a budget is tough, trying to balance all those competing interests, making sure that your kids have supplies. This year it's been complicated because we're trying to move a tech initiative forward, and that tech initiative is going to cost us about $1.9 million a year for as far out as you can see, to make sure that our kids have state-of-the-art devices in their hands. Again, a lot of debate around that.
Does the academic hub play into the budget right now?
Not directly. We have some fund balance or fund reserve set aside to start that, but really what ends up happening is people get very confused about our funding system. We don't run just like a regular checkbook. We have an accrual-based accounting system, but we also have a fund-based accounting system. So we have specific dollars for capital that can only be used for capital construction. We have other dollars for operating, and then we have some federal program dollars. That oftentimes people look at the corpus of money in general and say, well, you can do what you want. Well, no, we can't. So in this case, I think there are a lot of people who have really confused what we're trying to do with the academic hub and the expense that we're putting towards it. It's just been really a difficult conversation to get people to understand.
All right. Where does that stand this moment?
As you know, the board has suspended its pursuit of the academic hub. I will tell you that I've been approached recently by members of the county leadership team about let's revisit it. Let's talk about it again. I know that some of the city leaders would like to talk about it again. We've had literally hundreds of students and their families talk to us about it because they know that it's more than just Barbara Ingram. So I think there's kind of a quiet stewing going on right now, and that's a good thing. But right now it's going to compete with a lot of other ideas in the community.
Well, what would bring it back to the table as an active issue?
Honestly, I think what might bring it back is when people begin to talk in larger terms about not just downtown Hagerstown, but what we want for the larger community. There are some people who would love to see the front of the Maryland Theater be improved and expanded. There are some people who think that, some of the office space downtown right now would be better utilized if we had a little more activity on the street. Some of the restaurateurs are starting to reach out and say, we're investing money in our facilities. We need more foot traffic. So I think those things coming together all might drive this conversation. Perhaps not this year, maybe the next year. But I think we started a great conversation, put a good idea out there that would serve kids well, and we'll see where it goes.
We've gotten our first round of results from the latest testing, PARCC in short. How do you feel about where that stands once the initial numbers are out?
Well, if I just look at the results, I was really disappointed. We didn't do nearly as well as I would like to have done, but the one thing that I have to keep in mind is that it wasn't because our kids went backwards. It was absolutely because we raised the standard. We expected more from our kids. And quite honestly, we got more from our kids, almost across the board. But did we get more relative to other districts in Maryland? Did we get more relative? No, we didn't. And so, we're redoubling our efforts, working harder on our curriculum. One of the things that we saw is our kids didn't have the familiarity with the technology. Every one of our kids took this test on a device. We didn't have the experience that we needed, and we didn't have the stamina to then stay with the device. We had kids that, when they had to type in an answer, didn't have the keyboarding skills that they needed, and so we think that had a downward or depressing trend on our scores. So we're going to get there, I think. It's a slow, steady progress that we're making. Most of our other academic achievement trends are positive. Our MAP testing, which is we give quarterly to all of our kids. And I think many of our teachers would say that they're pleased with what their students are doing in terms of their commitment to their learning and their engagement.
I don't sense that there'll be any dramatic reaction to these PARCC results, but certainly we have to analyze them and adjust something compared to in relation to what we have.
Absolutely. I mean, we've spent a great deal of time going down to not just the strand level, but the actual student level. We're taking a look at what we have to do to change outcomes for individual kids. So, and the PARCC exams give us better data than any test that we've ever given to our kids about what our kids know and what they need to know. So we're looking carefully at that data. Our principals actually met just today prior to the show and began talking about how they're going to shape, not for next year, but for next week, what's going on with their kids. So I think we're in a pretty good place, Will. But again, for those people who are tuned in, and they said, well, in the paper it showed where you were, kind of the bottom third of Maryland school district. Yes, we were. No, we weren't happy at all about that.
Right. We'll adjust as a system, or will we react to PARCC building by building?
Both.
Okay.
In fact, grade level by grade level, teacher by teacher, will react to the PARCC exams.
Any final thoughts?
Well, I'd come back to the weather. Well, we're getting ready to face perhaps the community's first major snowstorm of the year. We want to say that we take these decisions very seriously. Safety is our number one priority with our young people. We're going to weigh all of the factors before we make a decision, but we actually hope to make a decision sometime later today so that when parents get home this evening, they'll know what we're going to do for tomorrow. As we look at the weather forecast now, they're saying that the greatest snowfall will begin to fall around 6 p.m. And of course, all this is subject to change, but we're looking at, well, what could we do then to perhaps get in a full day of school or a significant fraction so we can count it as a full day of school and yet get our buses home, get our teachers home. Our principals have already began rescheduling games that were scheduled for Friday night or events that were scheduled for Saturday. Our food service team has doubled up their meals that they deliver to some of the community agencies that we provide food for. So we're getting ready to go into a really, I think, an energized state of activity getting ready for the storm.
There's certainly enough snow in this one that would have, on an average school night, made a fairly easy decision. The fact that it's coming later, we're heading into a weekend, we may have a tougher decision, say, come Monday morning, depending on how much we get.
Well, absolutely, because we'll be dependent on how many hours the road crews spend out. Can they get the roads clean? What happens overnight? If the temperature gets warm Sunday afternoon and snow begins to melt and then it freezes. We have a lot of places where black ice is a real problem for us. Let alone kind of that compacted snow because people didn't stay off and let the road crews get out. So yeah, I think this is one where people should tune into both our social media and our traditional media responses because we're going to kind of have to play it all by ear.
Right. We have a dozen or more different locations where information can be gained. I think we're pretty complete on the way we release the word about schedule changes and updated information.
Absolutely. And I know people love to hear from Wilcox, and when you make that call,
Right.
I get a lot of...
So if we do something later today, although we're not going to sing it, I've had any number of... although that's up to you. That's up to you. I mean, if you want to step up and turn it into some sort of entertainment vehicle when we make a school schedule change.
That's not going to happen.
I didn't think so. But I tried to stay away from it on my count. Thanks again, as always, for taking time to do the show. Dr. Clayton Wilcox, our guest on Lunchtime Live. We're here the third Thursday of the month at 106, a partnership between Washington County Public Schools and WJEJ.